Hello, and welcome to Super English Talks. This is the place where we make learning English easy, simple, and fun. My name is Jara, and I'm so happy that you are here with me today. Before we start, I want you to do something. If you can, close your eyes for just a moment. Now, think about a time when you heard a song in a language you didn't understand. Maybe it was a song on the radio, or maybe it was a song from a movie. You didn't know the words. You couldn't translate the sentences. But still, you could feel the music. You could feel if it was happy, or sad, or full of energy. That feeling, that connection, that is the power of listening. Listening goes deeper than words. It connects us to the rhythm, the sound, and the emotion of a language. And today we're going to talk about how you can use listening to improve your English. Not in a difficult way, not in a stressful way, but in a simple daily way. We are going to explore one method that really works. Listening to English every single day. Now, maybe you're thinking, but Jara, I don't have time. I'm busy. I have work. I have family. I barely have time to drink my coffee in the morning. And I understand that. I really do. Because many years ago, I felt exactly the same. Let me tell you my story. When I was learning a new language, I tried everything the traditional way. I bought big grammar books. I studied long vocabulary lists. I made flashcards. I memorized rules and more rules. And do you know what happened? When I tried to watch a movie in that language, I couldn't understand it. When I tried to talk to a native speaker, it felt like they were speaking at super speed. The words all came together in one big blur of sound. I felt frustrated. I felt tired. I even thought, maybe I'm just not good at languages. But then, a friend gave me some advice that changed everything. He said, Jara, stop studying so hard. Stop filling your brain with rules. Just listen. Every day. Even if it's only 10 minutes. Listen when you wash the dishes. Listen when you walk to the bus stop. Just let the sounds of the language be around you. At first, I didn't believe it. It sounded way too simple. How could just listening actually help? But I was desperate, so I decided to try. I found a radio station in that language, and I played it every day. At the beginning, it was just noise. I didn't understand anything. It felt impossible. But then, something interesting started to happen. Slowly, very slowly, I began to recognize one or two words. Then a small phrase. Then I started to notice the rhythm of the sentences. It was like my brain was waking up and slowly tuning in, like adjusting a radio to the right frequency. After a few weeks, I could understand the general idea of what people were talking about. After a few months, I could even watch TV shows and follow most of the story. It wasn't magic. It wasn't talent. It was just the result of one simple thing: listening every single day. That experience completely changed how I think about learning languages. It showed me that you don't need to study for hours and hours. You don't need to be a genius. You just need a small habit, the habit of listening. So, in this episode, I'm going to guide you step by step. I'll show you why listening every day is so powerful, what kinds of things you can listen to, and how to make time for listening, even if you are very busy. Think about it this way. If you wanted to learn to play the guitar, would you practice only once a month for 5 hours? No, of course not. If you did that, your fingers would forget what to do every single time. But if you practice just 10 minutes every day, little by little, your fingers would get stronger, faster, and more comfortable. It's exactly the same with your brain when you learn English. Think about the guitar again. If you only practiced once in a while, let's say once a month, you would always feel like you were starting from the beginning. You would forget the chords. You would forget where to put your fingers. Every time you picked up the guitar, it would feel frustrating, like you were back at zero. But imagine something different. What if you practiced every single day, just 15 minutes? 15 minutes is not very long. It's shorter than watching a TV show. It's shorter than waiting in line at the bank. This is how habits work. Your brain and your muscles create a new connection, a new pathway. And learning a language, especially listening, works in exactly the same way. Our brains are incredible machines, but they need repetition and consistency. When you listen to English every single day, you are training your brain. You are teaching it to recognize the sounds, the rhythms, and the patterns of the language. There's even a scientific word for this. It's called neuroplasticity. That sounds complicated, but the meaning is simple. Our brains can change, adapt, and grow based on what we do every day. Every time you listen, you are creating and strengthening these pathways. Let me tell you a story about a student I once knew. His name was Carlos. Carlos moved to the United States from South America because of his job. Now, Carlos was not a beginner in English. In fact, his reading and writing skills were excellent. He could read long, difficult reports. He could write professional emails with no problem. But when he was in a meeting with his American colleagues, it was a different story. He told me, "Jara, it feels like everyone is speaking a different language." They talked quickly. They used idioms and slang that he had never seen in books. And on top of that, each person had a slightly different accent. So, what did Carlos do? He nodded his head, pretended to understand, and stayed quiet. But inside, he was anxious. He was afraid to ask questions because he didn't want to look unprofessional. And slowly, his confidence started to disappear. Carlos tried everything. He went to evening grammar classes. He read English newspapers. He memorized lists of vocabulary. But nothing changed. His listening skills were stuck. That's when we talked. And I told him the same thing my friend once told me. Forget the grammar books for a little while. Stop worrying about being perfect. Just listen every day. I gave him a very simple plan. For 1 month, his only homework was this. Listen to a 30-minute podcast every day during his commute to work. That's it. No note-taking. No dictionary. No pressure. Just listen. Carlos was doubtful. He said, "Jara, really? That's all? Just listening? How will that help me in my meetings?" I told him, "Trust the process." So he did. For the first week, it felt like nothing was changing. The podcast was still too fast. The words still blended together. But in the second week, something small happened. He realized he could understand the podcast host's introduction every single time. It was a tiny victory, but it gave him hope. In the third week, he began to catch the main idea of each story. Not every detail, but the main point. By the end of the month, he could follow about 60% of the podcast, and he didn't feel stressed anymore. And then came the real breakthrough. One day at work, during a team meeting, his boss was explaining a new project. And suddenly, Carlos noticed something. He was understanding. Not just one word here and there. Not just the topic. He was actually following the conversation. He could hear the individual words. He could catch the key points. He could even understand some of the jokes his colleagues were making. And the best part? For the first time, he felt confident enough to ask a question in the meeting. Not in writing. Not in private. Right there, in the middle of the discussion. It was a breakthrough moment. What happened to Carlos wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was his brain adapting to daily listening. It was consistency. It was repetition. It was the simple habit of giving his brain the chance to get used to English every single day. By listening to clear, well-spoken English every day in that podcast, Carlos was building a foundation. He was training his ear. He was teaching his brain to recognize the basic sounds and rhythms of the English language. This daily training made it easier for him to understand the faster, more complex English he heard in his meetings. It built a bridge between the English he had learned in books and the English people were actually using in real life. So, when you feel like you are not making progress, I want you to remember two pictures. The first picture is Carlos sitting in his meetings, slowly but surely starting to understand more and more. And the second picture is the guitar player practicing every day until the music becomes natural. It's not about studying for long, stressful hours. It's about the small, consistent actions you take every single day. That is how you build a skill. That is how you build confidence. And that is exactly how you will transform your English listening ability. Now that we understand why daily listening is so important, let's talk about something very practical: how to listen. You see, not all listening is the same. There are actually two main types of listening. And when you understand the difference between them, your practice will become much more effective. We call them passive listening and active listening. Let's start with a picture in your mind. Think of exercise. Passive listening is like taking a gentle walk in the park. You are moving, you are breathing, you are enjoying the fresh air. And yes, it is much better than sitting on the couch doing nothing. But you are not pushing yourself hard. You are not focused on building strong muscles or improving your speed. You are relaxed. Maybe you are chatting with a friend while you walk, or thinking about your day, or just enjoying the trees and the sky around you. That is what passive listening feels like. It's when you have English audio in the background while you're doing something else. Maybe you turn on an English news channel while you cook dinner. Maybe you listen to an English pop song while you drive your car. Maybe you play a podcast while you are cleaning the house. In passive listening, you are not trying to understand every single word. You are not taking notes. You are not studying. You are simply letting the English flow around you. You are absorbing the rhythm, the intonation, the music of the language. And here's something important. Even though it might feel like you are not learning, passive listening is actually very powerful, especially if you are a beginner. It helps your brain relax. It helps your ears get comfortable with English. It reduces the feeling of being overwhelmed. It's like dipping your toes in the water before you jump into the swimming pool. You start to notice how the voice goes up and down. You notice the pauses, the melody of the sentences. And these are things you cannot learn from a textbook. Think about a baby. When a baby learns its first language, what do? They don't study grammar. They don't memorize vocabulary lists. They simply listen. For months and months, they just listen to the voices around them. That is the power of passive listening. But now, let's talk about the second type: active listening. If passive listening is like a gentle walk, active listening is like going to the gym for a focused workout. This is when you give all of your attention to what you are hearing.
No multitasking. No distractions.
This is the moment when you sit down with the clear intention to understand. The goal of active listening is to engage deeply with the audio. You might listen to a short clip 2 or 3 times. The first time, just try to catch the main idea. The second time, listen for details or for new vocabulary. Maybe the third time, you pause the audio, repeat what you hear, or even write down a few useful expressions. Active listening is work, but it's the good kind of work, the kind that makes you stronger and more confident. The third time you listen, you might use a transcript, a written version of the audio. This way, You can read along and connect the spoken words with their written forms. That's a very powerful step. Active listening is when you ask yourself questions like, what is the speaker's main point? What does this new word mean in this context? Why did the speaker choose that expression? It's when you pause the audio to look up a word. It's when you rewind to hear a tricky phrase again. It's when you push yourself to really understand, not just guess. Active listening is demanding. It takes more concentration. It takes more energy. But this is also where you see the biggest improvements in your comprehension, in your vocabulary, and even in your grammar. Let me share another story with you. This story is about a woman named Maria. Maria was a nurse, and she had a dream. She wanted to work in the United States. But to do that, she had to pass a very difficult English exam. And one big part of that exam was listening comprehension. Now, the listening section was not easy. The audio clips were about medical topics, patients, conditions, treatments, and the speakers spoke quickly, using medical terms that were often unfamiliar. For Maria, this was overwhelming. So, she started small. She began with passive listening. While cooking dinner or doing housework, she played medical dramas on TV. She listened to health-related podcasts in English. She didn't understand everything, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was simply to let her brain get used to hearing medical English, to become familiar with the sound of those difficult words. But Maria knew passive listening alone would not be enough. So, she added active listening into her schedule. 3 times a week, for 1 full hour, she sat down at her desk with no distractions. She found short videos of doctors explaining medical conditions. Her process was very structured. First, she listened once and tried to write down the main idea in just 1 sentence. Second, she listened again, pausing whenever she heard a new word. She wrote the word down and tried to guess its meaning from context before checking a dictionary. Third, she watched one last time with subtitles to confirm her understanding. And then came the most powerful step. Maria would explain the medical condition out loud, in her own words, as if she were speaking to a patient. This was not easy. It was hard work. It was tiring. But Maria didn't give up. After 2 months of this routine, something incredible happened. Her listening improved dramatically. She passed her exam with a high score. But more importantly, when she started her new nursing job in the United States, she felt confident and prepared. She could understand her patients. She could follow conversations with her colleagues. She could communicate clearly and effectively in a high-pressure environment. And this is the lesson. The best approach is to use both passive and active listening. You can't just do one. If you only do passive listening, your progress will be very, very slow. If you only do active listening, you might get tired and burn out. But if you combine them, you get the best of both worlds.
Here's how.
Use passive listening to fill the empty moments in your day, your commute, your cooking, your cleaning. Let English be the background music of your life. Then, schedule a few active listening sessions each week just like Maria did. This is your workout. This is where real growth happens. By balancing the gentle walk of passive listening with a focused workout of active listening, you create a powerful and sustainable plan for improving your English listening skills. Now, I know what you might be asking. Okay, Jara, I'm ready to listen every day. But what should I listen to? This is a fantastic question. Because choosing the right material is just as important as the listening itself. If you choose something too difficult, you'll get frustrated and want to quit. If you choose something too easy, you won't learn anything new. And if you choose something boring, well, let's be honest, you just won't stick with it. The secret is to find material that sits right in the middle, that sweet spot. It should be interesting to you and at the right level of difficulty. What's already strong? The swimming metaphor very visual and easy to relate to. Clear explanation of the 70 to 80% comprehensible input rule. Kenji's story inspiring, relatable, shows the power of combining passion plus English. Direct call to action at the end. So, what's your passion? How to improve further. Tighten a few transitions. Make the jump from the metaphor to the 70 to 80% rule a little smoother. Simplify some longer sentences to keep the rhythm light and easy for listening. Add a reinforcing line at the end, something that ties back to the sweet spot and interest together. Here's a refined version of your text with those tweaks. Finding your level. Imagine you are swimming in the ocean. If you stay in the very shallow water where your feet can always touch the bottom, you'll be safe, but you'll never learn to swim. If you go too far out into the deep water where the waves are strong, you might panic and struggle. The best place to learn is in between, where the water is deep enough that you must swim a little, but you can still stand up if you need to. It's a little challenging, but not overwhelming. Your listening practice should feel the same way. The ideal material is something you understand about 70 to 80%. That means you can follow the main story without too much difficulty, but there are still some new words or phrases that push you forward. This is called comprehensible input, language you mostly understand, but with enough challenge to help you grow. If you understand 100%, it's time to move up. If you understand only 20%, step back and find something easier. Experiment until you discover the level that feels just right for you. But here's the most important part. Choose something you actually enjoy. This is the magic ingredient. When you are genuinely interested in the topic, learning doesn't feel like study. It feels like fun. Take Kenji, for example, a cook from Japan. He loved making traditional Japanese food, but he wanted to bake European-style bread and pastries. At first, he tried English cookbooks, but they were confusing and frustrating. Then, he found YouTube channels hosted by bakers who explained everything step by step. Because he loved baking, he was motivated to watch every day. He learned words like knead, proof, and glaze. He watched, listened, and then practiced in his own kitchen. Within a year, he was not only baking amazing sourdough bread and croissants, but his English listening had improved more than he ever expected. Kenji didn't just study English. He learned it naturally by following his passion. So, what's your passion? Cooking, sports, history, science, fashion, technology, gardening, whatever it is, there's content out there in English waiting for you. When you combine the right level with something you love, listening practice stops feeling like homework and starts feeling like discovery. Many students make the mistake of choosing a podcast only because the title says Learn English. But here's the truth. If the topic doesn't interest you, you won't stay motivated for long. Real progress comes when you listen to something you are genuinely curious about. If you love history, listen to a history podcast. If you love sports, find a podcast about your favorite team. If you love cooking, choose a food podcast. When you enjoy the topic, you won't have to force yourself to listen. You'll want to listen. And that is the secret to building a long-term habit. Now, where can you find great listening material? Let's look at a few options. 1. Podcasts. Podcasts are amazing. There are podcasts made especially for English learners at different levels, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. But there are also podcasts created for native speakers on every subject you can imagine: news, comedy, business, health, science, travel. There is something for everyone. 2. Audiobooks. Another wonderful option is audiobooks. Listening to a story read by a professional narrator is not only helpful for English, it's also relaxing and enjoyable. And here's a tip. Many audiobooks come with an ebook version. You can listen and read at the same time. This makes it much easier to connect the sounds you hear with the words you see. 3. YouTube. YouTube is like a giant treasure chest. You can find news reports, documentaries, comedy sketches, cooking shows, travel vlogs, almost anything. The best part about YouTube is that it's visual. The pictures and videos help you understand the context even if you don't know every single word. This makes it a very powerful tool for learners. 4. TV shows and movies. And of course, we can't forget TV shows and movies. A great strategy is to start with shows or movies you already know in your own language. Because you already understand the story, you can focus fully on the English. Over time, you can move to new shows and challenge yourself more. So, here is your mission. Become an explorer. Don't just wait for the perfect material to appear. Go and search for it. Find that British baker who explains recipes step by step. Find that American historian who tells stories about the past. Find that Australian traveler who shares exciting adventures. Whoever it is, let them become your English teacher without even knowing it. When you finally discover something you love, you will notice a big change. You won't have to push yourself to listen every day. You will actually look forward to it. And that is when learning becomes natural, enjoyable, and sustainable. But the next step is very important. Techniques. What do you actually do when you sit down for an active listening session? How can you get the most value out of your practice? Think of it this way. Listening practice is like going to the gym. At the gym, you don't only do one exercise. You work different muscles with different movements. That way, you get stronger overall. It's the same with listening. If you use a variety of techniques, you will train all the different listening muscles that help with comprehension. One of the most powerful techniques is called shadowing. The name might sound mysterious, but the idea is very simple. Shadowing means listening to a short piece of audio and repeating the words out loud at the same time as the speaker. You try to copy the speaker's sounds, rhythm, and intonation as closely as possible, like you are their shadow. Why is this technique so effective? Because it connects listening and speaking directly. It forces your mouth to make the same sounds you are hearing. This trains your brain to recognize those sounds more quickly in the future. Shadowing is also very active. You cannot think about your grocery list or check your phone while shadowing. You must be 100% focused. That is why it's so powerful. It improves your pronunciation, your rhythm, your fluency, and it helps you speak more naturally. Sunhai's story and the power of shadowing. Let me tell you about a student named Sunhai from Korea. Sunhai was a very hardworking learner. She had studied English for many years, so she already knew a lot of grammar rules. She also had a big vocabulary. On paper, she looked like an advanced student. But there was a problem. When she spoke, her words came out very slowly and carefully, almost like she was afraid of making a mistake. Her pronunciation was also strongly influenced by her first language. She often felt self-conscious, worried that people might not understand her. Then she discovered shadowing. She decided to give it a try just 10 minutes a day. Nothing too big. She found a podcast where the host spoke clearly and naturally. Every day, she would put on her headphones, listen to a sentence, and then immediately repeat it, copying the exact rhythm and melody of the speaker's voice. At the beginning, it was frustrating. The words felt heavy in her mouth, and she couldn't keep up with the speed. But she didn't quit. She kept practicing day after day. Slowly, her mouth and her brain began to work together. After a few weeks, something amazing happened. Her friends noticed the difference before she did. They told her, "Wow, your English sounds smoother." Her speech had more natural rhythm. She was no longer stopping after every word. And the biggest change? Her confidence. Because she was practicing the physical act of speaking English every single day, she started to feel more relaxed in real conversations. Shadowing was training her mouth like an athlete trains their body. It gave her the muscle memory to speak naturally, without overthinking. A quick shadowing exercise. Let's actually try a tiny shadowing exercise together right now. Here's how it works. I'll say one short sentence. The first time, just listen. The second time, repeat it with me. Ready? The sentence is, I'm really looking forward to the weekend. Listen carefully. I'm really looking forward to the weekend. Now let's do it together, but a little slower this time. Repeat after me. I'm really looking forward to the weekend. How did that feel? Maybe a little strange at first, right? But notice how it forces you to focus on every single sound. That's exactly the power of shadowing. It trains your ear and your mouth at the same time. Technique 2, dictation. Now, let's move to our second technique, dictation. This one might feel a little more traditional, like something you did in school, but don't underestimate it. Dictation is incredibly powerful for improving both your listening and your accuracy. Here's how it works. You play a short sentence. You pause the audio. You write down exactly what you heard. Then you listen again to check your work. It sounds simple, but it's very effective.
Why?
Because it forces you to pay close attention to details. You can't just guess the meaning or write down close enough. You have to notice every small sound, the articles, the verb endings, the prepositions. For example, maybe the speaker says, he has been working, but you write, he has been work. You know the grammar rule, but your ear didn't catch the small sound of ing. Dictation helps you train your ear so you don't miss those details.
Paolo's story.
I remember a student named Paolo who was preparing for a university entrance exam. He was smart and he studied hard, but he kept losing points in the listening section. The problem wasn't big mistakes, it was small ones. For example, he would hear, they're going to arrive soon, but he would write, they're going to arrive soon. Or he would hear, she said she'd call, but he would write, she said she'd call. These small mistakes added up. They lowered his score, even though he understood the general meaning. So Paolo began to do daily dictation practice. He found short news clips online that came with transcripts. Each day he would listen to one sentence, write down exactly what he heard, then compare his sentence with the official transcript. Whenever he made a mistake, even a tiny one, he circled it. This way, he could see his weak spots clearly. At first, it was frustrating, like putting his listening skills under a microscope. But after a few weeks, he noticed that his ear had become much sharper. He was finally hearing those small but important details. And when he took his exam again, his score went up significantly. That's the power of dictation. Technique 3, summarizing. The third technique I want to share with you is called summarizing. This one is simple, but don't let that fool you. It's very powerful. Here's how it works. After you listen to something, a short podcast story, a news report, a YouTube video, even part of a movie, your task is to retell the main points in your own words. You can do this in 2 ways. Speak out loud, as if you're explaining it to a friend, or write a short paragraph with the key ideas. Why is this technique so useful? Because it does 2 very important things. First, it shows whether you truly understood what you listened to. When you summarize, you have to find the main ideas and ignore the small details. This is a higher-level skill than just catching individual words. Second, it makes you actively process the information. You can't just copy what the speaker said. You have to rephrase it using your own vocabulary. This step is what helps move new words and phrases from your passive knowledge, you understand them when you hear them, to your active knowledge. You can actually use them yourself. That's why summarizing is so powerful. It's not just about hearing English, it's about thinking in English. How to use these techniques. Now, you don't have to use all three techniques, shadowing, dictation, and summarizing, every single day. That would probably feel overwhelming. Instead, create a simple weekly plan that mixes them up. For example, on Mondays and Wednesdays, do 10 minutes of shadowing. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, try a short dictation exercise with a news clip. On Fridays, listen to a story or podcast and record yourself summarizing it. By rotating these exercises, you keep your practice fresh and interesting. You're also working on different listening muscles, just like at the gym. Over time, this combination will give you a strong and well-rounded set of listening skills. Facing common challenges. Now, let's be honest. Every journey has challenges, and the journey to better listening is no exception. You will definitely face obstacles along the way. That's normal. In fact, expecting these challenges and knowing how to deal with them makes you a smarter learner. One of the biggest challenges students tell me about is fast speech. You know the feeling. You're listening to a native speaker and the words fly out of their mouth like a machine gun. They connect the words together, they drop sounds, and it all becomes a blur. You think, I'll never understand this. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Every learner goes through this. Even native speakers sometimes struggle to understand someone who talks very quickly or unclearly.
So, what can we do about it?
Strategy for fast speech. Here's where modern technology comes to the rescue. Almost every platform, YouTube, podcast apps, online courses, has a playback speed control. You can slow the audio down to 0.75x speed, or even 0.5x. And let me tell you, this is not cheating.
This is smart training.
When you slow down the audio, you give your brain extra time to process the words. Suddenly, you can hear the individual sounds and notice how the words connect. It's like watching a fast action scene in slow motion. You can finally see all the little details that were invisible before. Fatima's story. Let me share a story about one of my students, Fatima. She absolutely loved watching interviews with her favorite American actor. But there was a problem. He spoke so quickly, and he used so much slang that Fatima could only catch a few words here and there. She felt discouraged and thought maybe her English wasn't good enough. Then I suggested she slow the videos down. At first, she felt a little silly, like it was too easy. But when she played the interview at 0.75x speed, something amazing happened. She started catching full sentences. She began to understand the jokes, the stories, even the slang expressions. After a few weeks, she slowly increased the speed back to normal. By then, her ear was trained. What once sounded like a blur of noise now sounded clear and understandable. That one small adjustment, slowing down the playback, completely changed her listening experience. Challenge 2. Different accents. The second big challenge many learners face is the huge variety of English accents. Maybe you're really good at understanding your American English teacher or your favorite YouTuber from the US. But then, you hear someone from Scotland or Australia or India, and suddenly it feels like you're listening to a completely different language. I know this can be frustrating, but instead of seeing accents as a problem, I want you to think of them as an opportunity. Remember, English is not just one country's language, it's a global language. People all around the world use it every single day. And being able to understand different accents is like unlocking a superpower. So how do we train this skill? The key is exposure. Don't only listen to one type of English. Mix it up. If you usually listen to American podcasts, try a program from the BBC in the UK. If you watch Hollywood movies, add an Australian film to your list. If you follow American YouTubers, find a channel from Ireland, India, or South Africa. At first, your ear will struggle. That's normal. Your brain is tuned to a certain sound pattern, and new accents will feel unfamiliar. But here's the good news. The more you expose yourself to different accents, the more flexible your listening becomes. You'll start noticing patterns, different vowel sounds, different rhythms, different ways of connecting words. Think about it like visiting a new city. On your first day, all the streets look the same and you get lost easily. But after a few days of walking around, you start to recognize landmarks. You learn the main roads. You build a mental map. Listening to new accents is the same. Each accent you practice with adds another neighborhood to your map of English. So my advice is simple. Be an accent explorer. Be curious. Be open. Don't worry if you don't understand everything right away. Every minute you spend listening to a new accent is making you a stronger, more confident global communicator. Challenge 3. Unfamiliar vocabulary. The third common challenge is new words and idioms. Imagine this. You're listening to a podcast or a conversation. Everything is going well, you're understanding clearly, and then the speaker uses a word or phrase you've never heard before. Your brain suddenly stops. You get stuck on that one word. While you're busy trying to figure it out, you miss the next 2 or 3 sentences. Sound familiar? This happens to almost every learner. The most important skill here is learning to guess meaning from context. Don't panic when you hear an unfamiliar word. Keep listening. Usually the speaker will give you hints. The sentence around the word, or even the next sentence, can tell you what it probably means. Here's an example. Let's say you hear, "The journey was very arduous. We had to climb steep mountains and walk for 10 hours every day." Maybe you don't know the word arduous, but when you hear climb steep mountains and walk for 10 hours every day, you can make a good guess that arduous means something like difficult or tiring. This is a skill that takes practice, and it also requires you to be comfortable with a little uncertainty. You won't always know the exact meaning right away, and that's okay. With time, your brain learns to fill in the gaps. So when you hear a new word, don't freeze, don't panic, and don't stop listening. Stay calm, use the context, and let the bigger picture guide you. Over time, this habit will make you a faster and more confident listener. Challenge 4. Losing focus. Another very real challenge is simply losing focus. You sit down for an active listening session with the best intentions. At first, you're fully engaged. But after 5 minutes, your mind starts to wander. Suddenly, you're thinking about your emails, what to make for dinner, or that funny video you saw earlier. This is completely normal. Don't blame yourself. Our brains are not designed to stay in deep concentration for long periods of time. The good news is that there's a simple solution. Practice in short bursts. Instead of forcing yourself to do one long 1-hour listening session, break it into smaller pieces. 3 sessions of 15 minutes are far more effective and far easier than trying to push through a full hour. When you know you only have to focus for a short period, it's much easier to stay engaged. And here's something important. Even with all that, your mind will still wander sometimes. That's okay. Don't be hard on yourself. Simply notice it and gently bring your attention back to the audio. Think of it like meditation. The real practice is not in never losing focus, but in returning your focus again and again. Each time you do that, you're strengthening your ability to concentrate. So, remember this. Facing these challenges is not a sign of failure. It's part of the process. Every time you push through a tricky accent, guess the meaning of a new word, or bring your focus back to the task, you're building mental strength. You are training your brain, and with every session, you're getting better. Fitting listening into a busy life. Now, let's talk about another big challenge, time. Life is busy. Between work, family, errands, and trying to have some kind of social life, it can feel like there just aren't enough hours in the day. So, when a teacher like me comes along and says, you need to practice your English listening every single day, it's completely natural to think, when am I supposed to do that? This is such a valid question. Many learners don't give up because of a lack of motivation. They give up because they simply can't figure out how to fit practice into their packed schedules. Here's the secret. It's not about finding more time. It's about using the time you already have more intelligently. The trick is to notice those small hidden pockets of time in your day and transform them into learning opportunities. This is where passive listening, what I like to call the gentle walk, becomes your superpower. You don't need to create a brand new hour in your day. Instead, you change what you're listening to during activities you're already doing. Think about a typical day. For many people, it starts with a commute. You might be driving in your car, sitting on a train, or riding a bus. That's a perfect opportunity for listening practice. Instead of turning on the same old music playlist, why not put on an English podcast? You could learn something new about science, enjoy an interesting story, or catch up on the day's news, all while traveling to work. See how simple that is? You're not adding more time. You're just transforming dead time into learning time. Finding hidden time. Clara's story. Let me tell you about a woman named Clara. Clara was a single mother with 2 young children and a full-time job. She had a dream. She wanted a promotion at work, but she knew her professional English needed improvement. She felt completely stuck. She told me, Jara, I get up at 6 a.m. to get the kids ready. I work all day. I come home, make dinner, help with homework, and by the time the kids are in bed, I'm too exhausted to even think about studying. Sound familiar? Many of us feel the same way. Life is busy. There always seems to be too much to do and too little time. But when we looked at her daily schedule carefully, we discovered something amazing. There were hidden pockets of time she could use. The first opportunity was her 30-minute drive to and from work. That's 1 full hour every day. The second was the time she spent doing chores in the evening, like washing dishes and folding laundry, which was usually another 30 to 40 minutes. I suggested that Clara dedicate these times to English listening. During her commute, she listened to a podcast about business and management. It was related to her career, so she stayed interested and engaged. In the evening, while doing chores, she listened to something more relaxing and fun, like an audiobook or a comedy podcast. It didn't feel like studying. It felt like a little break in her busy day. Clara did this consistently for 6 months. She didn't use grammar books. She didn't do any writing exercises. She just listened, and the results were incredible. At her next performance review, her manager noticed a big change. Clara was speaking more confidently in meetings. She understood her international clients better and contributed more to discussions. And yes, She got the promotion she had been dreaming of. The magic here isn't that Clara suddenly found extra hours in her day. The magic is that she repurposed the time she already had. She stacked her new language habit on top of her existing routines. This is a strategy anyone can use. How you can find your hidden listening time. Think about your daily routine. Where are your pockets of time? Do you walk your dog every morning? That's perfect for a podcast. Do you spend an hour at the gym? Put on an English audiobook instead of music. Do you cook dinner every night? Let a news channel or podcast play in the background. The key is to make it easy. Have your listening materials ready to go. Create a playlist of podcasts on your phone. If you have to spend 5 minutes searching for something every time, you're less likely to do it. But if you can just press play, the habit becomes effortless. Also, match the content to the activity. If you're doing something that requires concentration, like driving in traffic, choose something easy to follow, like a story or conversation you've heard before. If you're doing a mindless task, like folding laundry, you can choose something more challenging that requires more attention. Don't underestimate the power of these small moments. 10 minutes while waiting for the bus, 15 minutes while making lunch, 20 minutes while going for a run. All of these add up. If you can find just 30 minutes of listening time in your daily routine, that's 3.5 hours a week, 14 hours a month, 168 hours a year. That's a huge amount of exposure to English. And it will transform your listening skills without you ever feeling like you have to study. So, take a careful look at your day. Where is your hidden learning time? Find it, use it, and watch your English skills grow, even on your busiest days. Next, I want to shift gears a little and talk about something that's at the heart of learning and connecting with others: storytelling. The power of stories in learning English. From the earliest days of human history, long before we had books, computers, or smartphones, we had stories. People would sit around fires in villages or in homes and share tales, tales of heroes, adventures, ancestors, and dreams. Stories are how humans make sense of the world. They're how we pass on knowledge, culture, and values. And when it comes to learning a new language, stories are one of the most powerful tools we have. You might ask, why is that? Why is listening to a story so much more effective and memorable than just memorizing a long list of vocabulary words? The answer is simple. Our brains are wired for stories. When we read or memorize a list of rules, only the language processing parts of our brain are active. But when we hear a good story, something amazing happens. If the story mentions a character running through a forest, the part of your brain that controls movement becomes active. If the story talks about the smell of freshly baked bread, your sensory brain that processes smells starts working. We don't just hear the story, we experience it. We are transported to another place and time. We feel the emotions of the characters, their joy, sadness, fear, and excitement. This emotional connection is exactly what makes the language stick. New words and grammar are no longer abstract rules. They are part of a meaningful story that your brain remembers naturally. Let me share a personal example. When I was learning Spanish, I struggled with the past tense. Spanish has two forms of the past tense, the preterite and the imperfect, and I could never remember when to use which one. I read all the grammar explanations. I did hundreds of exercises. But in real conversations, I still got it wrong. Then I discovered a podcast that told historical stories from Latin America. I became fascinated by stories of ancient civilizations, explorers, and revolutions. I would get so caught up in the stories that I completely forgot I was studying Spanish. After a few months of listening every week, something incredible happened. I started to feel the difference between the two past tenses. I couldn't explain the rules perfectly, but I knew naturally. When the storyteller described a scene, what the weather was like, or what people were doing, they used one form. When they described a specific completed action, they used the other form. I had learned grammar without studying rules, through the context of the story and the natural flow of the language. Stories are also perfect for language learners because they give us repetition without boredom. In a good story, key words and ideas are naturally repeated. This repetition helps your brain remember the words, grammar, and expressions, but because it's part of an exciting plot, you don't even notice it. It's much more enjoyable than reviewing the same flashcards 50 times. Let's practice with a story. Now, I want to put this idea into practice. I'm going to tell you a short story. Don't worry about understanding every word. Don't take notes or analyze grammar. Just listen and enjoy. Notice the words, the rhythm, and the way the story flows. This is how you let language sink naturally into your brain. This is how learning through stories works. I want you to relax and just listen. Let the story take you away. Don't worry about understanding every word. See what you can understand just from the context and the flow of the story. This story is about a man named Arthur. Arthur was a quiet man who worked in a small, dusty bookstore in the heart of London. He had worked there for over 40 years. When he was young, he had a full head of dark hair. Now his hair was white as snow, and his back was a little bent from years of leaning over books. Arthur loved his job. He loved the smell of old paper and leather. He believed that every book had a soul, and his job was to find the right book for the right person. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, the little bell above the door jingled. A young woman rushed in, shaking the rain from her coat. She had bright, curious eyes and a backpack overflowing with maps and travel guides. "I need a book," she said, full of energy. "But not just any book. I need a book that will change my life." Arthur smiled slowly and gently. He had heard this request many times before. "A life-changing book is very personal," he said softly. "It depends on the life that needs changing. Tell me, where are you going?" "I don't know," the young woman admitted. "That's the problem. I feel stuck. I have a good job, a nice apartment, but I feel like I'm living someone else's life. I want an adventure. I want to see the world." Arthur nodded. He shuffled to the back of the store, to a dark corner filled with old, forgotten travel books. He ran his fingers along the spines, his eyes closed as if listening to the books. Finally, he pulled out a small, slim book bound in faded blue leather. There was no title on the cover. He handed it to the young woman. "What is it?" she asked. "It is a story," Arthur said, "about a man who left everything to find a place he had only seen in his dreams. It has no maps, and it might not give you all the answers, but it might help you ask the right questions." The young woman, whose name was Elena, bought the book. That evening, she began to read. The story was simple but captivating. It was about a lighthouse keeper who left his post to search for a mythical sunlit island. As Elena read, she felt a growing courage inside her. The next day, she quit her job. A week later, she sold most of her belongings and bought a one-way ticket to a small coastal village in Portugal. She had chosen the place simply by closing her eyes and pointing at a map. For the next year, Elena traveled. She worked on farms, taught English to children, slept in hostels and on night trains, and read Arthur's blue book so much that the pages began to fall out. The book was her constant companion. She didn't find a mythical island, but she found something more important. She found herself. She discovered she was stronger, braver, and more resourceful than she had ever imagined. 1 year after she first walked into the bookstore, Elena returned to London. She went straight to Arthur's shop. The old man was in his usual spot, dusting a stack of poetry books. When the bell jingled, he looked up and saw her. "Ah," he said, his eyes twinkling, "the adventurer returns. Let me tell you about a man named David." David had a very clear goal. He wanted to watch his favorite American TV show without subtitles. When he first started, he could barely understand 10% of what was being said. He felt frustrated very easily. Every time he didn't understand something, he would get angry with himself. Many times he almost gave up. Then David decided to change his mindset. He created a listening log. Every time he watched an episode, he wrote down the date and gave himself a score from 1 to 10 for how much he understood. In the first week, his scores were all 1s and 2s. It was discouraging to see, but he kept going. He practiced listening every day with other materials too. After 1 month, his scores went up to 3s and 4s. After 3 months, he was getting 6s and 7s. Seeing his slow but steady progress in the log kept him motivated. It showed him that his hard work was paying off, even when it didn't feel like it on a daily basis. David learned patience. He learned to trust the process. After about a year, he had a very special day. He watched an entire episode and realized that he understood almost everything. He didn't need subtitles at all. It was a moment of pure joy, a joy made possible by his patience. The second part of a strong mindset is embracing imperfection. Many language learners are afraid of making mistakes. They are afraid of not understanding, and they are afraid of speaking because they might say something wrong. This fear can stop you from learning. You need to change how you think about mistakes. A mistake is not failure. A mistake is proof that you are trying and pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. Think about a scientist in a lab. They run hundreds of experiments. Do all of them work?
No.
Most of them fail. But the scientist does not see this as failure. Each failed experiment teaches them something. It shows them what not to do and brings them closer to the answer. You need to be like a language scientist. Be curious about your mistakes. When you misunderstand something, ask yourself, was it a new word? Was it the speaker's accent? This curiosity will replace fear with learning. Finally, you need to find your why. Your motivation is your fuel. Why are you learning English? Is it for a better job? To travel and connect with people from other countries? To understand your favorite movies and songs? Your why must be something deeply meaningful to you. On days when you feel tired or unmotivated, your why will keep you going. Write it down. Put it on a note on your bathroom mirror or on your phone screen. Remind yourself every day why you started this journey. I once met a grandmother named Jara from Italy. She started learning English in her late 60s. Even though she was older, she found her why, stayed patient, and enjoyed every step of her learning journey. Her motivation was simple and very powerful. Jara had a son who married an American woman. They had a young daughter, Jara's granddaughter. The little girl only spoke English. Jara's deepest desire was to talk to her granddaughter, to read her bedtime stories, and to share stories about her own life. That was her why. Learning English was very difficult for her, but whenever she felt like giving up, she would look at a picture of her granddaughter smiling, and she would put on her headphones and listen for another 30 minutes. So, as you move forward in your learning, remember these 3 things. Be patient like David. Trust the long-term process. Be a fearless scientist with your mistakes. Learn something from every single mistake. Your mindset is the foundation for all your skills. Cultivate a positive, patient, and resilient mindset, and there will be no limits to what you can achieve. Let's review everything we learned today. We started by understanding the power of a simple daily habit. Consistent daily listening is like training a muscle. It changes your brain and builds the pathways you need for comprehension. We talked about the two types of listening. Passive listening, the gentle walk. This helps you get comfortable with the sounds and rhythm of English. Active listening, the focused workout. This is where you make your biggest gains in understanding. We explored how to find the perfect listening material. Not too easy, not too hard, but just right. And most importantly, something that is interesting to you. We also learned practical techniques for active listening. Shadowing. Repeat what you hear to improve your pronunciation and fluency. Dictation. Write down what you hear to improve accuracy. Summarizing. Retell what you heard in your own words to deepen comprehension. We faced common challenges: fast speech, different accents, and unfamiliar vocabulary. And we learned strategies to overcome them. We discovered how to fit listening into a busy schedule, not by finding more time, but by using the time you already have. We also saw the magic of storytelling. Listening to a good story is fun, memorable, and effective for learning English. Finally, we talked about the engine that drives your learning, your mindset. Be patient. Embrace mistakes as opportunities to learn. It might seem like a lot, but it all comes down to one simple idea. Listen every day. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Consistency matters more than intensity. Small, daily efforts add up. Over time, your English will improve in ways you might not even notice day by day, but the results will be amazing. 15 minutes of focused listening every single day is much more effective than a 3-hour study session once a week. It's the daily habit that will build momentum. It's the daily habit that will train your brain. It's the daily habit that will lead you to the success you are looking for. Then do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. Build a chain of listening days. And don't let the chain break. This journey is yours to take. It will have ups and downs, but it is worth it. Every new conversation you can understand. Every movie you can enjoy without subtitles. Every new person you can connect with. These are the rewards waiting for you. You have the ability to do this. You have the tools. You have the knowledge. And now, I hope you have the inspiration. Thank you for spending your valuable time with me today on Super English Talks. I hope this episode was helpful and encouraging. Your journey to better English listening starts now. If you enjoyed this episode and found it useful, please consider subscribing to Super English Talks so you never miss a lesson. For an extra boost, hit the notification bell. That way, you'll know as soon as a new lesson is ready, because every new episode is another step forward on your path to English fluency. If you know a friend, a family member, or a colleague who is also working hard to improve their English, share this episode with them. Let's support each other on this amazing journey. Until next time, I'm Jara. Keep listening. Keep learning. Keep believing in yourself. Goodbye for now.